This woman from my HOA thought she could break into my backyard pool, throw parties, and walk away without consequences. Until I turned the tables and gave her a humiliation she'll never forget. This is how I finally ended the reign of our neighborhood's biggest bully. You know what I used to think was the biggest headache about owning a pool? Not the leaves, not the filters, not even the endless chlorine bills. No, the real nightmare turned out to be my neighbor Karen and her small army of freeloading friends. They treated my backyard like it was their neighborhood water park. Day or night, they'd slip through my side gate like they owned the place, splashing around like they were in some summer music video, sipping cheap wine, cranking up Bluetooth speakers, and leaving behind a trail of soggy chip bags and beer bottles. At first, I tried to be civil. "Hey Karen, this is private property. Please ask before using it." She smirked, rolled her eyes, and said, "Don't be so selfish. It's just water." Selfish? My pool, my water, my bills, my time. But Karen treated my protests like background noise. Let's just say, I figured out a way to make every unauthorized dip feel like the biggest mistake of their lives. Because the next time they climbed into my pool, something happened that Karen and her hair would never forget. Before I jump into the full story, drop a comment with your location and your local time. I want to see just how far HOA drama stretches across the globe. Owning a home with a backyard pool was supposed to be my dream, my reward for decades of hard work. After 20 years of backbreaking construction jobs, I finally had the house I'd always wanted. Brick facade, a shady deck, and a pool sparkling like a blue gemstone under the Texas sun. It wasn't Beverly Hills luxury. It wasn't a mansion, but it was mine. I mowed the lawn, cleaned the gutters, skimmed the water, and ended every long workweek with a cold beer while my kids splashed around. That peace didn't last. Not with Karen living next door. Karen wasn't just any neighbor. She was that neighbor, the one you think is a myth until it's too late. Early 50s, bleached blonde hair with roots showing, and a voice that carried across the cul-de-sac like a fire alarm. She'd once sat on the HOA board but got herself thrown off for conduct unbecoming, which was the polite way of saying power-tripping tyrant. Yet she still strutted around with a clipboard, sunglasses perched on her nose, barking orders about lawn heights and trash bins as if she were running a military base. At first, I thought I could handle her with polite nods and forced smiles, keep my head down and she'd get bored. But Karen didn't get bored. Karen doubled down. It started small footprints near the pool that weren't ours, wet towels hanging over my chairs, and the faint smell of drugstore perfume in the air. Then one day, I caught her through the blinds. Karen herself, strutting around my backyard in a loud pink swimsuit, sipping wine like she was queen of the suburbs. I went outside and tried to be neighborly. "Hey Karen, this is a private pool. Please don't come over without asking." She threw her head back and laughed. "Oh, don't be ridiculous. We're neighbors. Neighbors share." I stared back. Not pools. Not mine. She just waved me off like I was a waiter interrupting her dinner. From there, it spiraled. She started bringing friends, 3 or 4 middle-aged women, occasionally a husband or boyfriend. They waltzed into my backyard like it was a public resort, blasting 90s country, popping corks, clinking glasses like it was spring break. One day, I came home to find a giant inflatable flamingo still bobbing in my pool. Half deflated, lipstick smudged across its plastic neck. It wasn't just disrespectful. It was insulting. This was my property. I scrubbed the algae. I balanced the chemicals. I paid the bills. But Karen's smug little smile only grew. "You're being selfish," she'd sneer. "Pools are meant to be enjoyed. What kind of neighbor locks everyone out?" That word selfish burned hotter than Texas asphalt in July. I had worked double shifts for years to afford that home. I had built that deck with my own 2 hands. Meanwhile, Karen hadn't lifted a finger except to dump her trash in my backyard and steal my peace. Then came the Facebook post, the final straw. Scrolling one night, I saw it. Karen, arms raised in victory in my pool. Caption: "Best free amenity in the neighborhood. Sharing is caring. HOA perks." The comments were a chorus of envy. "Wow, Karen, you're living the dream." That was it. the match that lit the fuse. I started documenting everything: photos of footprints, videos of Karen sneaking through the side gate, screenshots of her smug posts. I considered filing a complaint with the HOA, but let's be real. Those meetings are a circus, and Karen thrives in a circus. She'd twist it, make me the villain, and somehow turn trespassing into a debate about community spirit. So instead, I sat out in my lawn chair one evening, beer in hand, staring at the pool. That's when I saw it. A bottle of industrial strength cleaner sitting in the corner of the shed, its label screaming caution. And in that moment, a plan started forming in my head. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need the cops. All I had to do was let Karen enjoy the pool. On my terms. If they wanted their little free spa day, I'd give them one they'd never forget. If I wanted Karen to finally stop, I couldn't just yell louder. I had to hit her where it hurt. Her pride, her vanity, her image. Karen wasn't just a trespasser. She was a performer. She lived for appearances. Her hair was always dyed some new shade of blonde. Her nails were freshly done. Her makeup so thick it could survive a hurricane. But the one thing Karen absolutely could not tolerate was looking ridiculous. That was the weak point. That was my opening. At first, the bleach plan was just a dark little joke in my head. But the more Karen pushed, the less it felt like a joke and the more it felt like a mission. The final insult came on a Tuesday evening. I'd been up before dawn, worked all day on a job site, and came home bone-tired, dreaming of a quiet swim under the stars. Instead, I opened my back door to a scene straight out of a reality TV show. Karen and her friends had staged a full-on night pool party in my backyard. String lights draped across my fence, which I never gave permission for. Music thumping, wine glasses clinking, someone actually grilling burgers on a portable barbecue. My backyard had been transformed into their carnival. I froze, my jaw clenched. Then I stormed toward the deck, my voice louder than their music. "What do you think you're doing?" For a half second, everything went quiet. Then Karen, cool as a cucumber, raised her wine glass and purred, "Relax, we'll clean up. You should thank us. We're keeping the place lively." That was it. No more warnings. No more neighborly smiles. Karen wanted to keep pushing? Fine. I was done being the pushover. I marched back inside, slammed the door, and sat down at the kitchen table with a notepad. Step 1, chemicals. Step 2, timing. Step 3, patience. By the time I was done scribbling, I had a plan so detailed it would have made a Bond villain proud. This wasn't going to be dangerous. It wasn't going to leave me open to lawsuits. It was going to be poetic. Skin itching like fire ants, swimsuits fading, hair frizzing into straw. Humiliation sharp enough to sting worse than bleach itself. Revenge is supposed to be a dish best served cold. Personally, I like mine served chilled, chlorinated, and just irritating enough to ruin your day without landing me in jail. All week long, I kept thinking about it. Every time I passed the shed and saw that industrial strength cleaner, it practically winked at me. It wasn't just payback anymore. It was justice. If Karen wanted a spa day, I'd give her one, complete with skin irritation and a hair disaster. But I had to be smart. Karen was shameless, but not stupid. Anything permanent, and she'd drag me into court faster than you could say trespassing. I needed discomfort, not danger. Embarrassment, not injury. So I did my research. Late at night, while my wife slept, I scrolled through pool maintenance forums. Chlorine shock treatments, pH levels, horror stories about overdoing it. The answers were gold. Dry, brittle hair, guaranteed skin irritation, faded swimsuits. Bingo. The next day, I went to the hardware store and bought a few extra jugs of industrial cleaner. Tossed them in my cart like any other suburban dad gearing up for spring cleaning. The cashier had no idea she was ringing up the ingredients of my masterpiece. Back home, I stashed them behind the lawnmower in the shed, safely out of sight. Then I started watching Karen's schedule. Saturdays were her big pool party days. Tuesdays and Thursdays were girls' day swims. Perfect. I picked my stage. Saturday afternoon. I wasn't just going to pour the stuff in and leave. I wanted to see the results. The exact moment smugness turned to panic. So I repositioned my security cameras to capture the deck, the pool, and the side gate. I even tested the audio feed, hoping I'd catch the shrieks. All week, I acted normal. Waved politely as Karen watered her azaleas. Let her think she'd won. Little did she know the war was about to start. Friday night, after the kids were in bed, I slipped out back with a jug in each hand. The moonlight shimmered off the pool, water calm and inviting. I twisted off the cap and poured a steady stream into the deep end, watching it swirl like smoke under the surface. Then a second jug. Then a third. The smell stung my nose, but the water still looked perfect, sparkling blue under the floodlight. This was no longer a pool. This was a trap. I stood there for a moment, grinning like a mad scientist over his experiment. Enjoy your spa day, Karen, I whispered to the night. The next morning, I played it cool. Mowed the lawn, waved at a neighbor, took the kids out for ice cream. Meanwhile, my cameras back home were armed and waiting. Around noon, I checked the footage. Sure enough, the side gate creaked open right on schedule. In marched Karen, sunglasses flashing, tote bag on her arm, 3 friends trailing behind giggling like schoolgirls. They dropped their stuff on my deck chairs, stripped down to swimsuits, and dove right in. This was it. Showtime. At first, it looked like any other pool day. Splashing, laughing, Karen floating on her neon raft with her wine tumbler. But then, the scratching started. One friend rubbed her arm. Another wiggled her shoulders. Karen herself reached for her hair, confused. And then the shriek. A high-pitched banshee wail echoing through my speakers. My hair! Oh my God. What's happening to my hair? The blonde dye job was betraying her. Her perfect hair frizzed, dried, and turned patchy right before my eyes. Her friends scrambled out of the pool, scratching, clutching at their skin, shouting about itching and burning. One of them slipped on the deck, nearly face-planting before staggering to a chair. Karen's makeup was smeared, her once perfect hair sticking out in every direction like she'd been electrocuted. The bleach had done its job. Not dangerous, not permanent, but humiliating as hell. And the best part? I had it all on video. Every smug smirk, every snide remark, every empty bottle and soggy chip bag they'd left behind was paying dividends now. In shrieks, flailing arms, and a full-blown bad hair day apocalypse. On the camera feed, Karen clawed her way toward the ladder like a panicked cat. Her friends weren't faring much better. One muttering about her skin burning, another looking down at her faded swimsuit in horror. And then, the hair. Karen had always been precious about her hair. Weekly dye jobs, expensive conditioners, hours with the curling iron. But bleach doesn't care about vanity. By the time she climbed out, her golden mane had transformed into a tangled bird's nest streaked with orange and near-white patches. The sight made me laugh so hard my stomach hurt. I hit record on my phone screen, capturing every frame. This wasn't just satisfaction, this was evidence. If Karen tried to twist the story, I had proof of her trespassing, swimming, and melting down on camera. By the time they scrambled out, grabbing towels and shouting at each other, the backyard looked like a war zone. Chairs tipped over, wine spilled, soggy chips ground into the deck boards. Karen's neon raft drifted sadly in the corner of the pool like a sinking ship. I sat at the kitchen table with a beer in hand, watching it all unfold like the best sitcom ever made. Should we go out there? My wife asked over my shoulder. Nope, I said without looking up. Let them figure it out. They wanted to play in my pool. Now they can suffer the consequences. She smirked, shook her head, and muttered, You're evil. Creative, I corrected. There's a difference. Later that evening, I was out front watering the lawn when Karen stormed past on the sidewalk, wrapped in a robe, her hair sticking out like tumbleweed. For the first time in months, no smirk, no sass, no phony superiority, just raw, simmering embarrassment. Something's wrong with your pool, she snapped. I raised an eyebrow. Funny. Works fine for me. She opened her mouth, then shut it again. Her friends trailed behind like damp, defeated puppies, eyes fixed on the ground. Not a word. They disappeared into her house, slamming the door so hard the windows rattled. Through my open window, I swear I heard one of them mutter, "Never again! Mission accomplished." But the fallout didn't stop at my fence line. The next few days were even sweeter. No more early morning HOA patrols. No Karen strutting the cul-de-sac with her clipboard like a one-woman code enforcement team. No yelling at kids to keep their bikes off the sidewalk. It was as if the queen had abandoned her throne. By midweek, the whispers began. At the coffee shop, two neighbors chuckled over their lattes. "Did you see Karen's hair? Looks like a hay bale met a lightning strike." At the mailbox, another leaned in and said, "Heard her pool party went bad. Serves her right." Even the timid folks, the ones who used to duck their heads when Karen marched by, were laughing behind their hands. And the best part? I didn't have to spread a single rumor. Her humiliation was self-sustaining. Karen's vanity had always been her weak spot, and now it was being picked apart by the entire neighborhood. Of course, part of me wondered if she'd come storming back for revenge. That was Karen's style, loud, dramatic, and fueled by self-righteousness. But every time I glimpsed her from a distance, she looked smaller, deflated. Gone was the strut, the high-pitched voice, the holier-than-thou attitude. Instead, she shuffled, hiding under hats and scarves like a faded celebrity dodging paparazzi. But I wasn't about to let her off the hook. Karen had spent months turning my pool into her stage, bragging online, and treating my property like her own. It wasn't enough just to make her stop. I wanted to flip the script, to make her love of attention work against her. So one evening, I sent the footage, anonymously of course, to a handful of trusted neighbors. The subject line was simple: "Caught on camera, pool party crashers." No commentary, no explanation. Just the clip of Karen and her friends sneaking in, swimming, and then melting down on camera. Scratching, screaming, clutching their hair. By the next morning, the video had spread like wildfire. "Oh my God, this is gold," one neighbor texted. "Justice at last," another wrote. And my favorite, "You're a legend." I stayed silent. Plausible deniability. But inside, I was grinning so hard my face hurt. The beauty of it all? Karen couldn't fight back. If she complained, she'd have to admit she'd been trespassing. If she tried to twist the story, the footage would expose her. She was trapped, cornered by her own arrogance. Still, I knew Karen. She was stubborn to the bone. Sooner or later, she'd try to claw back her queen bee status. The only question was, would she come roaring back, or spiral even further? Either way, I was ready. I wasn't the pushover neighbor anymore. I was the guy with the pool and the plan. By the time the monthly HOA meeting rolled around, Karen had been laying low for 2 weeks. That alone was a miracle. No patrols, no Facebook rants, no knocking on doors to lecture people about their trash cans. The street felt eerily quiet, like the witch of the cul-de-sac had gone into hibernation. But Karen was Karen. She lived off control, attention, and drama. And like clockwork, she came back swinging. The HOA meetings were held in the community center down by the lake. Folding chairs, styrofoam cups, lukewarm coffee, the usual suburban snooze fest. I showed up late, as always, because nothing made Karen angrier than watching me stroll in casually while she was mid-speech. Except this time, she wasn't chairing the meeting. She didn't even have an official position anymore. Still, there she was in the front row, scarf wrapped around her fried hair, makeup caked thick to hide the blotchy patches. Sitting tall, trying to project authority, as though she were still the queen bee everyone should defer to. The board president, Michael, a level-headed guy with the patience of a monk, cleared his throat and started the agenda. Lawn maintenance, the 4th of July barbecue, tennis court resurfacing, the usual. And then Karen pounced. She stood up, interrupting him mid-sentence, her voice pitched high like a kettle about to whistle. "I need to address a serious issue in this community." Michael sighed. "Karen, please wait until open comments." She ignored him, going full courtroom drama. "There is a health hazard in our neighborhood. A swimming pool being improperly maintained. Chemicals being misused. Residents, including children, could be at risk. Gasps rippled through the room. A few neighbors looked around, confused. I kept my face neutral, sipping my terrible coffee. Karen pressed on, dramatic as ever. I myself was affected. I suffered skin irritation, hair damage. She touched her scarf. Serious personal distress. This is unacceptable. We need to find the homeowner responsible before someone gets hurt. I almost choked on my coffee. She was really doing it, trying to flip the script and pin this on me. Michael blinked. Karen, are you saying? Yes, she snapped. That pool is a ticking time bomb. Dangerous chemicals seeping into our neighborhood. I move that the HOA investigate and penalize. That was my cue. I stood up slowly, deliberately, every eye in the room turning toward me. Karen, I said evenly, are you seriously accusing me of mismanaging my own pool? Her eyes narrowed. You admit it then? I smiled. Oh no, I'm not admitting anything. I'm just fascinated by how you'd have first-hand knowledge of my pool's chemical levels. A few chuckles broke out. Karen's face flushed. I was invited, she stammered. Invited? I raised an eyebrow. Interesting, because according to my cameras, I pulled out my phone. You weren't invited at all. The room went silent. I tapped a button and the television at the front flickered to life. I'd come prepared with a USB stick loaded with the footage. And there it was, Karen and her friends sneaking in through my side gate, splashing, drinking wine, laughing like hyenas. Then the meltdown. Shrieking, scratching, clutching their hair as they stumbled out of the pool. The room erupted. Some gasped. Others burst into laughter they couldn't suppress. One neighbor in the back muttered, "Serves her right." Karen lunged forward. "This is an invasion of privacy. You can't." Michael held up a hand. "Karen, enough. This footage clearly shows trespassing on private property. You were not invited. You have no grounds to accuse anyone else of wrongdoing." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Another neighbor piped up, "Didn't you post pictures of yourself in his pool? Hashtag HOA privilege or something?" Karen sputtered. "That was taken out of context." The laughter grew louder. The tide had turned. For once, Karen wasn't feared. She wasn't even respected. She was a punchline. Michael banged the gavel. "This matter is settled. Karen, you and your guests will be issued a fine for trespassing. You are also banned from using community amenities for the next 6 months." Karen's face turned crimson. "You can't do this," she screeched. But the board had already moved on to the next item on the agenda. Karen slumped in her seat, scarf slipping just enough to reveal the frizzed, brittle mess underneath. I sat back down, calm as could be, and whispered just loud enough for her to hear, "How's that for community spirit?" Her glare could have melted steel, but it didn't matter anymore. She'd been exposed, stripped of her power, and branded as the fraud she was. Walking home that night, neighbors slapped me on the back. "Good job," one said. "About time someone stood up to her," another added. I nodded, but inside I was buzzing. Not just from the win, but from the realization that the balance of power had shifted. Karen wasn't untouchable anymore. She wasn't the queen bee. She was just Karen. The woman with ruined hair, a bruised ego, and no allies left. But I also knew something else. Karen wasn't finished. Not yet. People like her never quit. They lick their wounds, bide their time, and plot their comeback. And when she did, I'd be ready, because I wasn't just the neighbor next door anymore. I was the guy who beat her at her own game. If humiliation were contagious, Karen was patient zero. After the HOA meeting fiasco, her reputation tanked harder than a lead weight in my pool. Neighbors whispered. Some openly mocked. Kids on bikes zoomed past her house chanting, "Pool witch, pool witch." And for the first time in a long time, I smiled at the sound. I'd like to say I felt guilty, but I didn't. Not one bit. Karen had ruled this neighborhood like a tyrant for years, and tyrants don't give up their crown without a fight. Sure enough, she tried to fight back. First came the gossip campaign. She cornered neighbors on their morning walks, spinning some half-baked sob story about how I'd spiked the pool to deliberately harm her. She waved her brittle hair like Exhibit A, calling herself the victim of chemical warfare. But here's the thing. When you've spent years bossing everyone around, nobody's eager to join your pity party. Neighbors nodded politely, crossed the street, or flat out laughed. Doug, the guy 2 houses over, said what everyone was thinking. Karen, you weren't supposed to be in his pool in the first place. That shut her up fast. Next, she tried the legal route, dialing 911 to report that her neighbor had poisoned her. The officer who showed up at my door looked half amused, half exhausted. I showed him the footage. Karen trespassing, partying, and screaming as her bleach-fried hair snapped in the sun. He chuckled, shook his head, and said, "Ma'am, maybe stop breaking into your neighbor's yard." Case closed. By the 3rd strike, Karen was desperate. She marched up to my door one evening, fists clenched, jaw tight, voice trembling with rage. "You think you've won, don't you? You humiliated me. You ruined my life." I leaned against the doorframe, calm as a monk. "Karen, you ruined your own life. I just sped up the process." Her eyes burned. "This isn't over. People like me don't get pushed aside." I smiled slowly. "People like you already have been." I closed the door before she could reply. For the first time, she didn't bang on it. She just slunk away. But her spiral didn't end there. She tried to throw one more backyard party for what was left of her loyalists. Maybe a dozen people showed. When they saw the state of her pool, algae creeping along the edges, cloudy water, half-broken furniture. Nobody even dipped a toe in. They stood around awkwardly sipping cheap boxed wine, while Karen tried to rally them with speeches about taking back the neighborhood. Within an hour, they'd all trickled out. Karen stood alone at the edge of her murky pool, wine glass trembling, staring into the water like it might answer her prayers. Meanwhile, my yard was buzzing. Neighbors who once kept their distance now waved, stopped by for a beer, even asked if their kids could come over with permission. For the first time, the community wasn't divided into Karen's subjects and everyone else. It was united, and ironically, I'd become the unspoken anchor. Then came the final nail in the coffin. The HOA posted an official notice on the bulletin board and in the monthly newsletter. Residents are reminded that trespassing into private property is strictly prohibited. Recent incidents have resulted in fines and disciplinary measures. Respect your neighbor's property. They didn't have to name her. Everyone knew. Karen's shame was immortalized in black and white, delivered to every mailbox in the neighborhood. I caught her one morning tearing down one of the notices, hands shaking with fury as a group of teens walked by chanting, "Pool witch, pool witch." She tried to glare them into silence, but they just kept laughing. In that moment, it hit me. Karen wasn't feared anymore. She wasn't respected. She wasn't even tolerated. She was a punchline, and punchlines don't run neighborhoods. That Saturday, I sat by my pool again, beer in hand. The water was calm and clear. My kids splashed. My wife read a book. For the first time in months, I felt real peace. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I thought about everything. The bleach, the video, the HOA meeting, the downfall, and realized Karen had always believed she was untouchable. She thought she could take and take without consequence. But in the end, she'd been undone by her own arrogance and a little creativity on my part. I didn't just protect my pool. I reminded everyone that bullies only have power if you let them. Karen had paid the price, and from the look of her wilted roses, her overgrown lawn, and her empty driveway, she'd keep paying it for a long time. Here's the real lesson. Peace without respect isn't peace. It's surrender, and surrender only feeds the bully. You don't have to fight loud or cruel. You just have to fight smart, with evidence, with boundaries, with resolve. So if you're dealing with your own Karen, remember, you're not powerless. Set your boundaries. Protect what's yours. And don't be afraid to make them pay the price when they cross the line. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. What's the worst HOA or neighbor story you've ever had to deal with? And if you want more outrageous HOA drama, hit subscribe. You won't want to miss what's coming next.